Hello, geometry students. Welcome to factoring day 2. These are what I generally call type 2 trinomials. We did type 1 in the last lesson. And the trick here is that we usually call it A. I don't want to confuse you, but A is greater than 1. A is the number in front of x squared. The type 1, the number in front of x squared was always 1. And then we didn't have to worry about anything besides the factors of this one and the factors of that one, and that was how we did it. But the type 2 trinomials with A greater than 1 are different, significantly different. And they're a little harder, I'll be honest with you. But the process is the same, but there's there's a couple extra steps. So bear with me here. Step one is to note that this is type 2 because there's a number here. You can't just look at the factors of this and the factors of this and the sum. You can't look at the factors of this that add up to this. It doesn't work. So here's what you do instead. You multiply this number, the number in front of x squared, by this number over here. I'm going to do that right here. I'm going to say 3x, I like to do it on top. I'm just going to do it over to the side. So over here I say 3 times negative 24, which is negative 72. Now I'm going to look for two factors of this number that add up to the one in the middle. Before I just looked at this one, but now I'm looking at this one too. Sorry, now I'm looking at, first I was like, what factors of negative 24 add up to negative 14? Now I got to do 3 times negative 24 and look at the factors of this one that add up to negative 14. So I start looking at factors, 1 and 72. Since this is negative, one of these, since this is negative, let me start that over. Since this number is negative, one of these will have to be negative. So I'm really looking for numbers whose difference is 14. Difference between 1 and 72 is 71. That does not work. 2 and 36 are factors of 72, but the difference between these is 34. 36 minus 2 is 34. 3 and 24 work. That's how I got 72 in the first place. But the difference here is 21. 4 and 18 work, and 18 minus 4, oh, that is 14. So that's good. So I'm going to use these two factors, and I need the 18 to be negative so that I end up with negative 14. What I mean by that is if I do 18 minus 4, I get positive 14. If I do 4 minus 18, I get negative 14. I want this one. And so here's what you do, and this is where things get a little hinky. You're going to rewrite this middle term, negative 14x, in terms of these two numbers. And this is what I mean. If I do 4x minus 18x, that equals negative 14x. I got the 4 and the minus 18 from here. 4x minus 18x. That is negative 14x. So I can replace the negative 14x here with 4x minus 18x. And that's what I'm going to do. 3x squared minus 18x plus 4x minus 24. And right now you might be like, whoa, 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 whoa. Here was 4x minus 18x. And then over here, you wrote negative 18x plus 4x. Why did you switch the order, Mr. Revson? It's a great question. Thank you for asking. The reason I switched the order is because if you have the option, you always want the negative one first and a positive one second. Sometimes they'll both be negative and you won't be able to do that. But if you can, write the negative one first and the positive one second. I promise it's going to make your life easier. Okay, but the important thing to recognize in this step is that this negative 14x right here is the same thing as this minus 18x plus 14x. Minus 18 plus 4 is negative 14. I didn't change this thing at all, I just rewrote it. Now we're going to do a little trick which is called factoring by grouping. In theory, you guys learned this last year, I think, but maybe you don't remember it or maybe you didn't learn it. And this is what you do. You group the first two terms and you group the second two terms. And let me say this very slowly. I know this looks like multiplication here, but it's not. I'm not multiplying these things. I'm just grouping them so I can look at the groups. I'm just imagining a group here and a group here. I know parentheses usually mean multiplication, but this does not mean multiplication here. I'm just grouping. me say that one more time. Not multiplication. I'm just grouping so I can get a look at these things, okay? And now I look at the 3x squared and the 18x, and I'm gonna look at these two, and I'm gonna say, what's common? What's the common factor here? The greatest common factor between 3 and 18 is 3. And the greatest common factor between x squared and x is 1x. So like this has a 3x inside of it, and this has a 3x inside of it. And when I factor 3x out of 3x squared, it's basically like dividing. So you could imagine dividing by 3x. And the 3's will cancel out, and the x's cancel out, and the only thing that's left on the inside is an x here. And I can imagine dividing this by 3x, and I cross off those x's, and 18 divided by 3 is 6. So I get x minus 6. It's like a pretty big step. It involves, right here, we have to like group and then do what this is called GCF factoring, greatest common factor. Like you got to look at these and be able to tell that this 3x squared is made up of a 3 and 2 x's. And this term here, 18x, is made up of a 2 and 2 3's and an x. And the things that are common to both of these are this 1 3 here and this 1x here. And so that's where this 3x came from. I took the greatest common factor. Then the thing that's left over in the first term is just x. The leftovers I'll do in red. There's an x here, that's where this x came from. And what's left here is 2 times 3, which is equal to 6. In a similar fashion, I can look at these two and say, the only thing common to 4 and 24 is 4. And there's no x's in this one, so all I can take out of that one is a 4. If I divide this one by 4, I get x. If I divide this one by 4, I get negative 6. And it's really good for me that the two terms, the things left over in the parentheses, match. They have to match. I get x minus 6 and x minus 6. And so now the final step is to write, you can write this thing in a factored form now. Like when I say this thing, I mean the original thing. You take one of the thing that's repeated, and then each of the things on the outside. And this is your factored answer right here. So you take one of the things that's common to both. That's where this x minus 6 came from. And you take the two things that are on the outside and make that the other set of parentheses. So my claim is that this 3x squared minus 14x minus 24 is the same as this factored expression. And I'm going to check it just to show you. I multiply x by both of these things and I get 3x squared. I multiply x by this one, I get 3x squared. X times this one gives me plus 4x. Negative 6 times this one gives me negative 18x. Negative 6 times this one gives me negative 24. When I combine the 4x, the negative 18x, I get 3x squared minus 14x minus 24, which checks because that matches where I started. This is how you factor trinomials, what I call type 2, but really just ones where the leading coefficient, this coefficient in front of x squared, is not 1. So I'm going to break this video here, and then I'm going to do a couple more examples in the next video. And hopefully, if you didn't get it all this time, you'll catch it when I do it the next couple times.